While many Mercy mains may feel otherwise, Papa Jeff and the rest of Blizzard truly have gamers' best interests at heart while patching our favorite hero shooter, Overwatch. On occasion, though, the dev team decides to take out or change something massive. That can be through nerfs, buffs, or a term that can strike joy or fear, reworks. These are the Overwatch changes we miss. A disclaimer though, we fully acknowledge that these were mostly removed for balance issues, and some of these were broken or unfair. Yeah, we miss them, but they're busted. Believe it or not, Mercy hasn't had Resurrect since 2017. Even if you weren't playing then, I'm sure you've heard about at least one big play from a Mercy main reviving her entire team and retaking a point. At launch, Mercy was very similar to what she is today. Her Caduceus Staff and Caduceus Blaster are relatively the same, and her Guardian Angel and Angelic Descent have gone mostly unchanged. Starting off though, Mercy didn't have an E ability and had arguably the most powerful ultimate ability in the entire game. The enemy team could absolutely destroy your teammates by using several ultimates, but if they didn't tag Mercy, she could fly in and undo all of their damage. With one press of a button, Mercy could resurrect her entire team. Everyone would have full health, fully loaded weapons, and even a brief invulnerability to escape and reposition for a counterattack. A well-placed resurrect made you feel like Gandalf arriving on the third day at Helm's Deep, or maybe it's closer to being revived by the Lich King or the Night King. Fantasy analogies aside, reviving multiple teammates was a huge play, but it also felt strange using it on one or two teammates. Blizzard tried buffing, nerfing, and tweaking this ability, but in the end they realized it was best to take it out altogether. On September 19, 2017, patch 1.15.0.2 dropped, giving us Junkertown, D.Va's micro missiles, and of course, Mercy's new Valkyrie ultimate. Instead of rezzing her team, Valkyrie gave Mercy all kinds of temporary buffs, like boosted chain healing and the ability to fly freely. Resurrect became her normal E ability and could only revive a single teammate at a time. I was glad we finally had a use for all of her keys, because up to that point it just felt wasted. Several heroes had gone through reworks, but none of them felt nearly as dramatic as Mercy's Valkyrie. I mean, it was the first ultimate rework since launch, and it felt completely different compared to Resurrect. Either way, we do miss the days of big reses. There's no feeling like baiting out the enemy team's best ultimates just to instantly deny them with a full Resurrect. Okay, to clarify, I don't want another ARG like the one we had for the reveal of Sombra. I just missed the hype of long-awaited characters because the build-up to Sombra was palpable. Every new little detail got the community theorizing. Folks were trying to figure out who Sombra was as soon as the game released, with newspapers and frozen monitors on Dorado. That's right, we were so desperate we were staring at a screen while making our character stare at another screen. On July 12, 2016, Ana was added to the game as the first new hero. It was a big deal, but what did people focus on? Two different strings of hexadecimal numbers that, when decoded, read, "She who has the information has the power," in Spanish. Back then, Blizzard teased heroes as early as the release of the previous hero. From there, Blizzard released puzzle after puzzle, lines of code, websites, countdowns, Morse code, and more. It was all leading up to Sombra's release. The community was coming together to break down every challenge Blizzard threw our way, and when Sombra was revealed at BlizzCon 2016 by hacking onto the main stage, the crowd went wild. Unfortunately, we were all spoiled by that level of hype. Since then, the additions of new Overwatch characters have felt sudden. Baptiste, Ashe, and Moira all had no previous mentions in lore. Brigitte and Wrecking Ball had some story behind them already, but none of them drew the hype like Sombra and her ARG. Only Doomfist really comes close. His name and his gauntlet have been around since the first trailer, and when the payload on Nimbani changed, many started anticipating his upcoming release. When Doomfist dropped, there was plenty of payoff. The takeaway is that I missed the excitement of the Sombra ARG. I only watched it from the sidelines because I really don't know coding, but I really missed the long anticipation and big reveal of heroes for Overwatch. The end of Storm Rising teased a new Omnic character, so maybe they'll generate some buzz next. Still, nothing will be the same as the BlizzCon 2016 Sombra reveal. The patch that threw Sombra into the mix, patch 1.5.0.2a, also introduced the arcade, replacing weekly brawls. Before the arcade hub was introduced, we had a single weekly fun game mode called Brawl. Unlike the arcade, playing the brawls didn't earn you any loot boxes, and we were grateful. There were less options than the arcade, but brawls made up for that in their creativity department. Offering 5 different modes at any given time, the arcade had some fun and interesting game types like low gravity, total mayhem, and all the seasonal events. Still, Brawls introduced us to some game modes that have not resurfaced since. Justice Reigns from Above, where players could only play as Pharah or Mercy. Super Shimada Bros, which was set on Hanamura, and you were allowed to play either Genji or Hanzo, the good, the bad, and the ugly, starting you as McCree, Reaper, or Roadhog in a hectic firefight. I'll let you decide which one's which. This is Ilios, a match type of only Roadhogs and Lucios on the well map of Ilios. And then one of the most fun, Show Your Support, which only allowed support heroes, which at the time were Ana, Lucio, Mercy, Symmetra, and Zenyatta. Back then, Symmetra was still listed as a support hero because of her ability to give shields to allies. The most crowd control you had was Lucio's Boop or Ana's Sleep Dart, and in most matches you'd find your Symmetra or Zenyatta were the primary DPS, and Lucio had to be your substitute tank. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it kind of worked, and I would love to see how it would play out now. Obviously, Brigitte would be your team's tank, because she's a tank support hybrid, though plenty of people are going to say she's DPS. Symmetra's off the team, but Baptiste and Moira would be more than happy to fill the DPS role. And they would be nutty, and just like Total Mayhem, no one would ever die. They had similar brawls for tanks called Tanks a Lot, offensive with highly offensive, and overly defensive, which would be a bit harder because all of them are clumped into damage now, and we never really got another defense hero before they just wiped out that category, but they weren't all perfect. Of course, you weren't going to get a competitive version of Super Shimada Bros, but that's not what arcade is about. The arcade is about having fun and trying to earn quick loot boxes. While custom games have given us power to replay these, I'm more disappointed that they haven't been in rotation. Meanwhile, 3v3 elimination and 1v1 mystery duel have felt constant. Yay! The arcade still does offer rotating game modes like Capture the Flag and No Limits, but several non-event modes have never returned. That's sad. Next up is a change I fully admit deserved a rework, but damn do I miss seeing Reaper's precious little soul orbs. It made his edgelord vision feel special. Look, back at launch, Reaper's passive ability, the Reaping, turned every downed enemy into a small little health pack in the form of a red orb covered in a black fire-like effect. And while they're technically called health orbs, I'm always going to call them soul orbs because I believe Zenyatta, Bastion, and even Mei have a soul. I know, crazy. Anyways, Reaper could pick up those to recover about 50 health points. They helped him survive lone wolf missions without support and fed his dark nature by littering the battlefield with forgotten souls. Of course, they were only useful after a fight and mostly helped if you killed a bunch of enemies in a row. It wasn't super helpful unless the situation was already in your favor, so. Now, Reaper heals for 30% of the damage he inflicts on every shot. This gives him an immediate benefit, especially against tank heroes, and improves survivability during his ultimate Death Blossom. Of course, as a tank main, I fear the Reaper, even though Blue Oyster Cult told me not to. Ask your parents. The changes to the Reaping went live on June 20th, 2017 with patch 1.12.0.2, the same patch that gave us Horizon Lunar Colony. Again, while the new form of the ability is better mechanically, the soul orbs were cool because they were only for Reaper. He was the only one who could see them, making it one of the few resources exclusive to a single hero. Others include Mercy seeing the souls of her dead teammates and Torbjorn's scraps, which leads perfectly to our next item on the list. On October 9th, 2018 and patch 1.29.0.1, the most recent Torb rework launched, changing his ultimate Molten Core from a level 3 turret to the floor is lava. The temporary buff Torbjorn received from Molten Core was then reworked to Overload, an ability that replaced Armor Pack. Armor packs could be thrown out to you or your teammates to grant a temporary 75 armor to absorb some damage. With a 0-second cooldown, the only thing holding you back was how much scrap you were holding. You could pick scrap up from dead players and later slowly generated it over time. Once Torbjorn had maximum scrap, your team's defense was seriously hard to break. You could litter the control point in pseudo health packs that only your team could see and use. Then, if you were in No Limits, a pot of Torbjorns could turn a control point into a pot of gold that only their team could see. However, the scrap collecting mechanic was problematic. It was very feast or famine in nature. Torb would need time to build up scrap, and armor packs could be poorly placed and lack effectiveness. And there's no worse feeling than respawning with a full ult meter, but no time to set up and use it. With his armor packs gone, Torb's in a much better spot. He can leave the armor packs to his daughter. Still, I miss those games when everything was going right. You could litter a control point or a choke with glowing health packs, and you look upon your team to see everyone built like a tank. Good times. Those were good times. The only one with more reworks than Torbjorn is Symmetra. In her original build, Symmetra could place a regenerating shield on an ally that gave them an additional 75 hit points of regenerating shield health. They'd keep the shields until they died, in which case Symmetra could just apply it to them again. On tanks like Reinhardt and Roadhog, this didn't feel like much, but for heroes like Tracer, Zenyatta, and even Zarya, this was monumentally powerful. Later, her shields were nerfed to 50 HP, and then again to a measly 25. In patch 1.6.0.2, the shields became Symmetra's new ultimate ability, Shield Generator, granting her allies 75 shields once again, but only in a 50-meter radius. That's not a small distance by any means, but you just have to be smart with placing it. This was still when the dev team wanted to build characters to be very situational, and probably didn't mind that Symmetra was only great for defense and only okay on offense. Blizzard decided to rekit Symmetra to her new damage roll and make her more flexible across more areas of the game. They traded her shields for one massive barrier ultimate, and while it's definitely badass, we missed that extra HP. Similar to Torbjorn, you would be able to make your team into sturdier versions of themselves, but Symmetra didn't require the same build-up time. She was just underappreciated because her playstyle simply wasn't as active. Not everybody has to be Genji, y'all. It was cool to strap a small med pack to all your teammates and then go chase down a Genji. I know a lot of people hated her primary fire, but I appreciated it on those days that I felt like I just couldn't aim, so call me biased. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the beta. Bastion used to have a forward-facing shield with 1,000 hit points that would activate when put in defense mode. Sentry mode. To offset this, Bastion could only turn so far, allowing quicker, agile characters to get behind it. The Bastion would then need to make the decision, stay and fight, hoping an ally would shoo the fly away, or go through the rather lengthy transformation to turn and fight the new threat. This shield would also regenerate over time if undamaged, which made it even better than Reinhardt's, who's only regenerated when he stowed it away for several seconds. So if Bastion survived a wave of enemies, they'd have a full shield the next time the enemy returned. Back to square one, everybody! It was incredibly overpowered. With no limits as the default at the time, you would see double Bastions holding the second point of control maps for what felt like hours. Luckily, this was removed way back in the beta, but you could still see it in action in early gameplay if you wish to see this horror for yourself. Keep in mind, at the time, Bastion was also much more accurate in Sentry mode, and its gun could achieve headshot damage. This was the golden era of Bastion, and when everything went right, it was magnificent. But the second it was used against you, it was the worst thing that ever existed. I'm Kyle, or Alpha Lance anywhere else, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to The Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.